Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to our April virtual meetup on building collaborative relationships in healthcare. I'm Jen Drummond. I am a proud Jane ambassador and founder of Hummingbird Clinical Consulting, and I will be your host for today's session. These monthly meetups are more than just webinars. They're about connection, collaboration, and community. As I worked with so many different providers ranging from several different disciplines, one thing kept coming up. So many of you are doing meaningful work, but often in isolation. And that can lead to burnout, stagnation, or just feeling stuck. That's why we started these sessions to bring people together across specialties, locations, and systems to share what's working, what's not, and how we can build something better together. Today, we're diving into a topic that touches everything from your patient care to your bottom line, and that's collaboration. We'll explore how strong partnerships can reduce burnout, increase revenue, and help us all create more sustainable practices. Before we begin, a few quick housekeeping notes. Please stay muted during the presentation to minimize background noise. Once we move into the discussion portion of our session today, you are welcome to unmute or drop your thoughts in the chat. And lastly, this session is being recorded and you'll receive the replay and a follow-up resource guide after today's session. Now, I'm thrilled to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Julie Durnin, a true expert in collaborative care and team-based models. Dr. Julie is leading the way as CEO over at GingerDesk, and she's helped hundreds of clinics strengthen their systems and partnerships to build thriving, sustainable practices. I am so thrilled to welcome our guest speaker, Dr. Julie Durnin. She is a true expert in collaborative care and team-based models. Dr. Julie is leading the way as CEO over at GingerDesk, and she's helped hundreds of clinics strengthen their systems and partnerships to build thriving, sustainable practices. Dr. Julie, we are so blessed to have you here. Before we dive into your presentation and your insights, I'd love for you to just briefly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Jen. It's so great to be here. Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is so fun. And this is such a new format for us. Jen and I have presented together before. It's fun to make this collaborative and to be talking about collaborative healthcare while we do. So my name is Dr. Julie Durnin. I'm a naturopathic physician and I've been in practice for 20 years now. I'm also a clinic owner, so I've owned 2 clinics in my lifetime, and I currently still run one here in North Vancouver, Canada, with 10 healthcare practitioners. And I love, live, and breathe all things admin, systems, and organization. So I'm really excited to be speaking a little bit to that today, and also to be speaking to my absolute love for building community. So we're talking about collaboration, Jen, and I love it because it is my jam. And I don't think any of us can work in silos and be super successful. So it'll be great to have this conversation. I would love for everybody to be able to join in too and lend their insights on how they believe that collaboration can benefit them in health practice. So excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we will move right in to Dr. Julie's presentation. So we'll wait for her to share her screen. Again, everyone just stay on mute. We're going to listen intently, and then we'll move forward to some prompts and questions with everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Jen. So can everyone see my screen here? Great. Awesome. Now, Jen, if there are questions, please just let me know and I'll pause and then we'll jump in. What I'd love to do is talk about what is collaboration in healthcare and talk about this kind of high level and give you some examples of what that can look like. It's interesting because as soon as we started talking about this virtual meetup online, I started getting some questions from colleagues of mine who were asking me, what are you actually going to be talking about? And it made me realize that collaboration is kind of a new idea for many of us. It doesn't come naturally, and it's certainly not often talked about. So I'm going to give you a bunch of suggestions for how I believe collaboration can benefit you, your practice, your bottom line. And then also we'll talk about why building community is so important in business and in healthcare specifically. So let's talk about the big picture and why does collaboration really, really matter in healthcare? So next we'll talk about how collaboration can actually drive revenue and it can reduce your burnout. I'll give you some real examples of profitable partnerships. And then we'll talk about some tools that can actually make collaboration a reality for you. And then we'll talk about what's working versus not working. And this is where we want to open it up to Q&A and get folks involved. So if you'd like to ask questions as I go, please feel free, just pop them in the chat and Jen will stop me. So a little bit about me. Oh, bullet point, bullet point. I'm a naturopathic physician and I'm also the CEO and founder of Ginger Desk. So why does collaboration matter in healthcare? So when we collaborate, we move beyond a siloed model, as I just mentioned. It's where the siloed model is typically what we were all taught in school. It's where each provider works in isolation. We market ourselves, we see patients one-on-one, we create our treatment plan, and then we send it to the patient. But when we talk about a collaborative model, it's where we share and we live in an ecosystem where we share care. And this might be care where it's actually caring for the patient. It might also be like marketing campaigns. It might be sharing in the admin. And so this is what I want to talk today about is what collaboration means and how it can look different for each practice. So patients will really benefit from a more holistic, coordinated care. And we see this at Ginger Desk every single day. When we have a number of folks working together to support a patient, they really feel this coordination. They are more likely to be engaged, more likely to follow through on treatments, and frankly, they just feel generally more seen by the practice. But here's the secret. Collaboration is just as beneficial for you and me as providers. So when you're a part of a supportive team, you can feel less alone in your clinical decision making, in your day-to-day work, and you get to share the responsibility, which ultimately lightens the mental and emotional load as well as the physical load. So I often say collaboration or building community is no longer a nice to have. It's actually a strategic advantage. And I get to see firsthand here at Ginger Desk when we bring on new practitioners that when they start to work in a collaborative model, they actually have less burnout and they enjoy their job more. They also tend to be more successful as practice owners. In fact, the most successful clinics that we work with are never operating as just a leader alone situation. They're always working in collaboration with other partners within the clinic, outside the clinic, and also multiple admin team members. Now, collaboration drives revenue and reduces burnout. So this is where it gets especially interesting because the financial side and the human side can actually work together. So when care is coordinated, admin time drops. This is true. So that means that more of your team's time can go toward billable, actually revenue generating clinical hours or meaningful connections that can retain patients. So one example of this that I would love to tell you about is that we have a clinic that we worked with that simply introduced weekly team huddles. They then shared EMR notes and they saw that their admin email time actually dropped by 40%. And so this freed up over 10 hours a week per practitioner. So I talk a lot about this because I do this at my own clinic. So I am busy. For those of you who know me, I'm busy running Ginger Desk full time. I work definitely more than 40 hours a week running this company, building and scaling this company. but I also still operate my own clinic. And so the way that I've managed to do both really successfully is that I engage in weekly team huddles with my whole team. And we call this grand rounds, and we all dive in together and we talk about cases. We talk about who is best to support, what admin needs people need. And I cannot tell you how efficient and productive this meeting is, because it literally does reduce our time supporting these patients by about 10 hours a week each. And that sounds immense, but it's actually really true. It's amazing how uh, team collaboration can just drive thought processes and creativity. And once one person starts talking, the rest of us start noodling on the same idea and we come up with just brilliant plans. So the team huddle is never a time wasted. It's always an investment, and it always is like a synergy where the time you invest will actually just multiply in time saved. So my final note here on this is that collaboration isn't just good ethics, it's good economics. Now let's talk about some real life examples of profitable, sustainable partnerships. So one integrative health clinic that we worked with implemented a share pathway for patients with chronic fatigue. We saw this clinic that had naturopathic doctors, medical doctors, and registered dietitians, and some mental health providers. They worked together using shared chart notes in Jane. So what this means is that they shared their charts across the professions, across the disciplines, so that they could all support the case review. Within 6 months of supporting their patients, their average revenue per patient increased by 20% and their wait list doubled. And this was simply by opening chart notes up across disciplines and getting folks engaged in team huddles. Another practice we worked for added a virtual assistant through GingerDesk to manage patient follow-ups and lab results between providers. That alone reclaimed over 12 hours of practitioner time that was otherwise spent on admin and could now be spent on billable revenue generating hours. They were then able to reinvest that time into higher value services and new patient intakes. And then there's another one I want to mention, and this is peer mentorship programs. So I've seen a lot of clinics that we work with do still operate within this siloed model. Some examples of collaborative clinics that we've worked with really use this idea of peer mentorship, and I've seen it become so successful. And I've done this at my own clinic, and I cannot tell you the immense value that can be gained when you've got experienced clinicians mentoring new grads. So we often think of new grads as being like a little bit green. They take up a bunch of our time. They may not be revenue generating right away, but we can really expedite their growth and really get them onboarded a lot faster when we've got peers mentoring them. So these are like more experienced clinicians sharing their time, shadowing them, walking them through charts, jumping into grand rounds, doing these kind of things. We can actually reduce their onboarding time by 40% when we get the peers involved and collaborating in their onboarding. And I also want to talk a little bit about marketing here, because for those of you who've heard me speak before, whenever I talk about marketing, I always talk about my wolf pack. And I've talked to the Jane community about this before. My wolf pack is they're a small but powerful group of women that we connected about 10 years ago when we were all opening up our businesses. So I was opening my clinic, and I partnered with a lawyer, a dentist, and a personal trainer. So not the most likely, we're not all allied healthcare practitioners, but business-wise, we were actually at the same level. So I was opening a clinic, and they were all opening a gym, dental clinic, and law firm at the same time. And we all also had small children. And so we were at the same life stage, and we were equally motivated to get our businesses growing. So we started meeting up for dinners once a month. We started learning about each other's offerings and became clients of each other. And I'll be honest, I would never promote someone if I didn't believe wholeheartedly in the service they provided. And I really do believe that these women are offering this exceptional level of service in their businesses. So I started to promote them. They were promoting me. We were all cross promoting each other. And it was the best possible collaboration of marketing campaigns because all four of our businesses just skyrocketed. And our niche ended up being moms who were burnt out, go figure, all of us working and understanding this demographic. And we got so darn busy, all four of us. And right now, 10 years later, we still meet regularly. We still support one another. And we are all just expanding in different ways. And that's such a nice example of it doesn't have to be within your own clinic or practice, but look for different areas of opportunity where you might be able to cross promote, cross refer, and really profit off of each other's lists and networks. So the takeaway really is whether it's interdisciplinary care, admin delegation, peer support, or marketing, collaboration and building community and networks will fuel both your sustainability in practice and your business growth. So let's jump into the tactical of what actually makes collaboration function day to day. And so here are some of the tools that I see working best in high performing teams. First, short weekly huddles. So 15 minutes, that's all it takes. But if you get your admin team and your clinical team all on one meeting for 15 minutes a week, you will get aligned on what's happening in the practice, patient issues, your goals for the practice, and your priorities. And then this not only helps you to map out what's next, but it also keeps the team connected and really engaged. And it doesn't have to be in person. This can also be on Zoom. I've seen it be just as impactful. In fact, my team meetings at my clinic are always done on Zoom. We get better attendance that way. In fact, most of the time when we go to meet, we meet every Monday at noon. Most people are actually in their home offices when we meet. And it just makes it much more accessible to them. And then they really enjoy joining because it's easy. And then secondly, digital tools. So whether it's your EMR, so it might be Jane, but it might also be Asana or ClickUp or even a shared Slack channel. It's crucial that your team sees the same information in real time. So look, not everybody feels comfortable sharing charts across disciplines. That might not be your jam, but at least you could share a shared project in Asana where of course you keep it HIPAA compliant, so you don't talk about patient names, you've got them by number. But it is critical that you have some place to share information. It could even be a Google Sheet tracker for certain programs that you're sharing amongst disciplines. And then third, clearly defined roles. So often collaboration breaks down when nobody knows who's responsible for what and people just aren't accountable. So a simple roles and responsibilities matrix is what I suggest to be clear that here's where you live and here are your expectations. And then this is where this person lives and this is their expectations. And then you can combine that with certain timelines expected so that everybody is on the same page and it really reduces friction amongst team members. Finally, don't underestimate trust check-ins. So I like the idea of sending out surveys. It can be like a Google form, or it can be an actual survey monkey that you want to create, but sending out surveys to team members and asking them what's working, what's not. So what should we start, stop, and keep is how I like to think of this, just as a check-in. Find out what's working, what they're finding clunky, and get lots and lots of feedback, because what might be working for you maybe is a bottleneck for them. So it's really good to just open the lines of communication and make sure everybody's always on the same page. So the last thing I want to mention is that collaboration does not just happen because you hire awesome people. It happens because you put the right systems in place to help them work really well together. So I'm going to pass this back to you, Jen. And then why don't we open things up and we can talk about what's working for our colleagues, what's working for them in collaboration, because I would love to hear from them.
Yes, I was busy writing so many notes
As you
and
do.
nodding at as I do, and nodding at everything you were saying. Thank you so much for that presentation. It was so thoughtful and so well done. And I loved the tools section because I think that they are cost efficient recommendations that anybody can implement. And so we're not talking about blowing up your life and overhauling all your systems. These are small things that anybody can do in their practice. And even to your point, with the huddles. So in our practice, we did 5-minute morning huddles every morning. And we also did a weekly meeting. But the purpose of those huddles was to go over the patients that were coming in that day. And so we would use Jane's task feature, and our admin would keep up on the challenges, or wins that that patient was having specifically, so that our
I
team
love
was
it.
ready for who was actually coming in that day. We knew birthdays, we knew treatment plans, we understood where they were as far as in their care or maybe what was going on in their personal life. So it allowed us to show up very authentically for every single patient in the practice without feeling overwhelmed or frazzled, because we had a very busy practice. So I loved that.
Oh, thank you, Jen, because I love that you've brought that up because it's all part of being prepared, isn't it? And if you can be prepared and everybody can feel prepared together, what an amazing patient experience we can create. So thanks for bringing it back to organization because that's what it is, right? It's just taking the time to make time to communicate about what's important. It
Yeah.
really goes such a long way.
Yeah. And then the last point I'll make, just because I have a whole book now full of little tidbits that I'm gonna use myself, but one thing that we talk a lot about with our clients is the different leadership styles. And whether you have a small team or a large team, you're still in a leadership position if you're running your own practice. And so I loved, you didn't say it outright, but what you were describing about building trust and checking in with your team, that's a collaborative leader. That's what we call it, is collaborative leadership. And you're looking to your team to be able to support the growth of your business. So why wouldn't you be checking in? You want to be able to highlight your team's strengths and put them in positions that they're really going to shine, because then everybody is super engaged. So anyways, those were my two biggest takeaways. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Shall
Um,
I stop sharing so that we can open this up to the
yeah, we
rest?
can for sure. I have a couple questions I'm going to go through for everybody.
Great.
Okay. So we are now in our collaborative half an hour. So I'm going to use some prompts. Dr. Julie and I are going to chat as well. So feel free to unmute yourself at any time. You can turn on your camera. We can open up this chat. Or if you're more comfortable to just pop in your answer to the chat, I will read those out. And if you don't want me to use your name, just say so, and I will just make it anonymous. But the first question I have today is, have you ever experienced a collaboration that lightened your load? So either helped your clinic grow, or you grow personally, or it grew your practice financially. Oh,
Alicia
perfect.
says she has a sleeping baby, so she'll be in the chat. That's awesome, Alicia. I
Love,
love that.
love
Well,
that.
I can speak to this for a moment, Jen. So, in terms of a collaboration that I really saw move the needle, something that we started to do many, many years ago at my clinic was group webinars. And so here we are, you and I, Jen. But we started to do group webinars for patients. And it was so incredible how sharing the load on our clinical knowledge and the graphic design and the presentation of all of it and writing the draft for the newsletter. Everything was just so much easier when we all got involved. And so we actually created something called the Restore Your Health series. It was a 12-month program, all live webinars that was so popular with our community. And it didn't feel like a massive lift for any of us because we were all helping. And I look back now and I think what an amazing team I work with. But that system that we created was just so helpful. And we still do that today. And it's like you just don't have to do everything alone. It's so much better in community.
Hmm. Yeah, I love that you shared that. It's also, I find that when we work with individuals that share our mission, that creative flow, like that juice, that momentum that you build, it just becomes very natural and organic. And it can feel very isolating to be alone in your practice. And so, to your point, when you were talking a little bit about the marketing side of things too, it doesn't need to be somebody that's in your practice. You can reach out to anyone within your network, your province, your state. Um, so there's opportunity that exists for all of us. So we have Alicia here. Thank you for your chat. So she's saying for her consulting business, showing up in other communities or consultants with different niches has always propelled things for both parties. Yeah, exactly speaking to what we're talking about now.
I love that. And I mean, further to that is the sharing of this is just on a different topic, sharing clinical knowledge. So I see the most successful new grads that I've had start at my clinic have a really great community of text groups with their colleagues. And
Yeah.
so they've always got someone they can turn to. And something that we created at my clinic many years ago now was a joint Facebook group. And just having the my colleagues on that group, it ends up being hyperactive with clinical questions. They don't have to wait for grand rounds once a week. They can actually pop in and ask questions whenever they want. And then I also noticed that the new grads don't just come in hot with any question they have. They're always asking their new grad friends first, and then they'll come to us to kind of refine it, get from the older docs. And it's just so incredible how that knowledge is then it's vetted and it's often most evidence informed and it's high quality because you know that you're getting the experience of the existing docs. And
Mhm.
yeah, we don't have to be just asking, the PubMed for the answers. We can always lean on each other and all on our colleagues, whether they're in the clinic or outside the clinic, for clinical answers.
Mhm. And, not to be shy to do that either, because the majority of the time, your peers do want to help you grow, right? And so there's value,
That's right.
value in that. And I loved what you said about new grads and mentorship, either, within the practice or outside of the practice. It helps everybody grow, right? And there's fulfillment for senior doc to be able to help that new generation of docs coming up.
That's right. And because it solidifies the information for us as well. Like, isn't that true what they say? That you don't understand something so deeply until you can actually teach it. And so it's actually so wonderful. All of us love answering new grad questions because we've all had them, but it's also so, excuse me, so wonderful to just share and then deepen our own knowledge of that topic.
Right. Thank you for that. I will move on to our next question. All right, we have a question actually.
We
So
have
I'll
some
read that.
questions.
I'll read that. So a few questions. If you have an independent contractor, do you pay them for the huddle's time or mentorship program? So that's question number one.
Okay, so I can answer that, Jen. We don't. No, we don't. It's actually considered a bonus. So it's a value add that we offer at the clinic, and I think it's all how you position it. So true story, but pre-COVID, I used to have once a month, excuse me, once a month meetings for all of my practitioners at the clinic. and people didn't come. They were in person. They were always so engaging when we actually had a great attendance, but it was trickier for folks to attend. And I think because the cadence was so spread apart, like it was only once a month, we didn't have a ton of turnout. And then COVID hits 2020, we start doing weekly connection points on Zoom. And now the more people come, the more valuable it is. And then when people don't attend, they actually feel like they're missing out. And they're like, oh, shoot, what did you guys talk about that I missed? And so it's become more of this like culture build rather than an expectation where they feel like they should be paid for it. They feel like they're receiving something instead. And so most of my folks at the clinic are contractors. We do have some employees, but it's not paid time at all. And the peer mentorship program also, when folks are shadowing or sharing in that's also not paid time.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think to your point, it's in the way that you position that. So you're adding value to, I think more on the side of when we've hired associates to come on as chiropractors, and there's a mentorship program that exists there. And, they have a similar philosophy, similar way of adjusting. And that senior doc is really bringing that junior doc through the process of building a thriving practice. And so we wouldn't necessarily pay for time, that half an hour huddle or that, a couple hours a week of a mentorship program, but the value was there for both doctors because you're going to be in a position that you're going to shorten that amount of time that it's costing you to bring that associate on because it is expensive to hire an associate because you're really nurturing them and then they're going to get their feet on the ground a lot faster. So that's a great question. And then another question here is, what is a good frequency to ask your team about what is working, what's stuck?
Well, I'm sure you and I probably both have opinions on this, Jen. I think once a month is nice. I think quarterly is what some folks do, and I just don't think it's often enough. Like, I think monthly is probably a good cadence, in my opinion. Jen, I'd love to know what you suggest.
Yeah, so we did monthly check-ins and then we would also do quarterly reviews. And so this was more of a formal opportunity for our team members to share in written form what's working, what's not, what their suggestions would be to change something within their workflows or the practice. And we would also chat about patient care adherence with clinicians to understand what we could change if there was, a certain case within that quarter that maybe didn't go well and what we could have done differently. So quarterly was really, that sit down meeting and then those check-ins monthly or sometimes even weekly. Hey, I noticed that this interaction happened between you and so, or you and a patient. Can you talk to me more about what happened there? Because I think when you move forward with having a growth mindset within leading your practice, you're constantly on and aware of that ecosystem of your practice. So that communication happens, or should be happening pretty frequently, but at least monthly would be my answer.
You nailed it. And as you're talking now, I'm writing notes. Because you brought something up is that it's that this growth mindset is something that you're talking about. And I think when you said this before, it's about the style of leadership. I think what we're really getting at too is like if there's a culture that you can create, and as long as you have a consistent culture that you've built that really allows for the free sharing of resources and where collaboration is encouraged and it's sort of and this growth mindset is encouraged. I think that all comes from building that culture and really constantly speaking to the values that uphold those behaviors. And certainly at my clinic, we all share everything. And that's really been a work in progress. Like that certainly when I opened my clinic at first, it wasn't, that's not the way it always was. Like I had to really work hard to make sure that everybody was sharing their chart templates. They were
Yeah.
sharing patient handouts. Like there's certain things that, we work really hard on as practitioners. And I've just always been super free love about everything I've created. And so all my new grads get access to all the talks I've ever done and all the slide decks and the notes to the webinars because I want everybody to be able to enjoy the same level of success that I have. So I don't hold back. And I think that you can create that culture where that's just expected and then everybody follows suit. But it doesn't, yeah, then you don't have to force certain things. It's all about culture building.
It is. And you have there's open-mindedness in your practice so people don't feel fearful to share their thoughts and feelings about things. And it doesn't mean you act on everybody's thought or feeling. It just means that you're open to feedback. And that's where you build collaboration within your team or your practice is that you're open to understanding another person's perspective. You may not act on it. Essentially, you're running your own business, but I think it does breed that positive work environment that is mission focused and values aligned. And so, yeah, to your point, thumbs up. I definitely agree.
Awesome. Love it.
Anything else you want to share for that? Or I can move on to our next question for our attendees today.
No, my last point about this, like asking them what's working is that in at Ginger Desk anyway, we don't see a lot of surveys going out to team members. We often will send there are surveys that go out to patients, but we don't see a lot of clinics doing that amongst their teams. And I think that that is something really awesome that you can add is just a really simple, like repeatable survey to your
Mhm.
team members. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And like you said, Jen, like once you get folks engaged, it really, they really love being asked because the perception is now that you're listening and you
Right.
probably are if you're sending a survey.
Yeah. And you value their input. I often talk to clients that your patient may not tell you everything, but they're going to tell your front desk everything.
That's right.
They're going to say everything to the front desk, whoever's checking them out. And so if you're finding some challenges in your patient consults or you're not getting the results or you don't feel like you're connected or whatever the friction may be between provider and patient, talk to your front desk team. They're going to know what's happening in that patient's life, the challenges they're having because they're just an open book when they get
They
when
always know.
they
They are the best business advisors. They
they
always
are.
know. They have their finger on the pulse.
Right. So that's your superpower, lean on your team because they have a lot of great insight. And especially when it comes to, patient care, team dynamics, like you really want to lean into other people's perspectives to be able to grow. And I think that's where a lot of the magic lives. All right, let's move on to our next question. So this is about anybody's experience, but how has collaboration helped your team reduce burnout or increase revenue? So again, you can unmute yourself or add your comments in the chat, and then we'll talk about it. And I will leave Dr. Julie to give her
I mean,
advice.
that's the $1 million question, isn't it? How has, what's the question again, Jen? How has collaboration reduced burnout?
Oh, yes. How has collaboration helped your team reduce burnout or increase revenue? I've recommended clients to Ginger Desk, so I can answer this one.
Okay. Yeah,
I can
great.
answer this one first. So we work with healthcare practices across North America, and we leverage the use of Ginger Desk to be able to either help our clients optimize their internal structures or scale their business. And there's a lot of value there. So my answer to this question would be, how does it help reduce burnout? Well, when you are able to offload some admin duties to allow you to then go and focus on revenue generating services, it goes hand in hand. So one, you're reducing burnout, you're reducing the daily overwhelm of the constant demands and all of the extra stuff that takes away from your patient care. And then what's the return on that? The return is always an increase in revenue. You've now taken away like that dark cloud that's kind of hindering you and making you feel like you can't, move on to the next day. So you then become more in alignment with what your mission is in your practice, and it stimulates growth. So sorry that I stole a Ginger Desk example.
I love it. I mean, you nailed it because it's about staying in your zone of genius, right? And you say this all the time, but if we as practitioners and business people can do our best work that's mostly in our zone of genius, it is just it's magic that happens. And it's when we try to do everything that's in front of us that we end up being the bottlenecks in our business. So whether that's delegating the things that you don't enjoy doing or you're not so great doing to your front desk, that's the first step for sure. And then we look at like clinical collaboration. Maybe as a naturopathic doctor, I work with an acupuncturist. And so my zone of genius is not acupuncture, even though it's in my scope of practice. So I might also then delegate patient care to the acupuncturist for weekly acupuncture sessions. And then my zone of genius as a practitioner was always like the coaching aspect of medicine. And so knowing where your zone of genius lies and then really focusing your time spent on that is that's your brilliance. And so thanks for bringing Ginger Desk into that, Jen.
Of course. Well, I read the question. I'm like, oh no, this is a Ginger Desk highlight right here. I gotta go this way. All right, we have a question. So, taking billing and finding referrals off our clinicians' plates has helped them to focus just on their client care and resulted in better client outcomes. Yeah, she hit
Awesome.
the nail on the
Exactly.
head.
Yeah, it's not linear, right? It's not just like you remove that, therefore they have X amount of time. It actually results in better patient care. And
Yeah,
so there's better outcomes. Awesome.
absolutely.
Thanks, Alicia.
I gave an example for another talk that I did about optimizing your patient intake process and what it means to actually go through your intakes and understand whether or not you're asking the right questions to glean the results that you need for your new patient exam. And so automating that process, what it can look like to pre-review those intakes and how much time it can save your admin team in a week, and what that looks like over a whole month of work and how much time you save. And so whether you're delegating that task to a VA or you have an internal team member that can help you pick up the slack, now you're able to see X amount of new patients more over and above than what you were before. So not only are you, not eliminating, but shortening the amount of admin time you have on paperwork, but you're also expanding access to your care, which, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what the majority of clinicians want to do. They just want to help and serve more people. They don't really care for all the admin stuff.
That's the goal. Yes, some people call it the minutia of their day, but that is ultimately the goal, right? To expand our care and serve more people.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm gonna move on to our next question because we are almost out of time. We've been having so much fun here. But the next one is think of a great collaboration you've been a part of or seen in action. What do you think made it work? And then I have a couple examples here. So was it shared values? Was it great communication? Was it systems that supported the workflow or any other factors that lent to a successful outcome?
Let's see if some of our attendees have some ideas here, and then I won't steal the show, but I already know what I would say to this answer, to this question. Anyone else want to jump in? Where have you seen why did a collaboration really, why was it successful?
Mhm.
Because you talk about values all the time, Jen, and I love that about your work. You're always talking about like building systems that align with values. And then I wholeheartedly agree. If I had to choose just one area, I would say certainly building systems every time. Like I've said before, right? 94% of your problems in clinical practice aren't due to the people, they're due to inadequate systems
Mhm.
because people come and go. And you can, regardless, you're going to need a capable person to operate whatever functions you have in your clinic. But if you have terrible systems in place, even the best, most capable people will fail ultimately because it truly is the systems that will allow people to succeed. So, whether that's a new patient intake system, whether it's an accounts receivable follow up system, if you're a doctor like me, maybe it's a lab system where you can actually keep track of the lab results that are outstanding.
Yeah.
If you don't have a system in place, you will ultimately fail because even the most capable people can't just keep it all in their heads. And so, for two people to collaborate, especially I see that at the front desk, they need to employ the correct systems.
Yes, absolutely. And we have another comment, so I'm going to read it out. So I think just knowing that there are others out there who are able to take some kind of task off your plate and knowing they're doing so in an exceptional way because it is their thing. Yeah, so I think this speaks to defining roles within a practice and ensuring that it highlights individual strengths. And that really does help to keep a team engaged. If somebody is doing a task that either, gives them anxiety or it makes them super bored or, they're counting the minutes down until the end of their shift, like you don't want people in that mindset. You want to be able to highlight individual strengths but also understand what their motivating factors are because like that's where momentum builds for a practice, and I think we can both speak to that of um yes, I talk about values a lot. And yes, I talk about systems because they are so intertwined, but it's because they breed momentum. You will have people knocking on your door, on your wait lists to get into your practice as you build that because everybody's in this ecosystem of growth. And we've both experienced that. It's electric. And no one's ever going to want to leave your practice. I mean, we had team members that had been with us for 20 years. They retired in our practice because it was
Amazing.
an environment that they felt like they were coming home to. So
How do
no,
you make systems and values sound so exciting? I love that you just called them electric. That's, that's the best, Jen. That's it. You live and breathe this stuff. I love it.
I really do. I really do. I want to touch on marketing a little bit before we let everybody go. But I'd love to hear from our attendees about if you've ever experienced, a collaborative relationship that helped you promote your business or grow your business, or even I think about personally just like thought leadership pieces, like where you've been able to share your experience and your education. So I'd love to hear from anyone that wants to add themselves into the chat. Has collaboration been a marketing tool for you? And if so, what did you do?
And I would love for us to do a whole other session on this, Jen, because this is it's such a cool topic, right? With like influencer communities and the ability to tap into other people's networks is
Yeah.
so easy. And I don't know that enough of health practitioners are doing that. And so collaborating in marketing is actually such a $1 million idea. Are any of you collaborating from a marketing perspective with other practitioners, businesses,
I think it,
companies?
yeah, it's such an underutilized tool, I think, as well. Oh, Emily says,
Emily
we'll have another
agrees.
session on marketing. Yeah. Well, and I think it's I think I've been on Ginger Desk for, yes, I did a webinar on growth, systems and tools for growth. And we can talk about ads, we can talk about brand messaging, and it's not that they don't work, but I also feel like when you're authentically sharing your message and you know who your ideal client or patient is, it becomes a lot easier to build a purpose-driven practice because the patients that come to you already feel completely aligned with your messaging, with your services, and your communication style. So we have a lot of comments here, so I'm going to read them.
Great.
So we have a group of local clinicians that we created last year, and we meet once a month in person. And with other providers knowing each other so well, we easily market each other's services because we are also familiar with each other. And
I
then
love that.
say, everyone has their own specialties that you really learn to understand their target demographics, and it's natural marketing. Yeah, authentic. Like this is what we're all about.
Yeah. And people want to know, like, and trust their health practitioner. It's not so just standard flat advertising doesn't work for us. We really, it's such an intimate relationship. And so how wonderful, like Alicia, you've created your own wolf pack that I call my group my wolf pack. And I think it's so powerful, right? For a local group of us. Certain people join BNIs, and those are effective in some regions as well. I love the idea of curating your own local group of
Yeah.
powerhouse business owners, because then you know that you can honestly, authentically vet them, and you all serve possibly the same demographic or the same region. So powerful.
And I also feel like to that point, even if it's, different specialties or even maybe different demographics, in my experience, even just working with other clinicians and healthcare providers, even if, I worked with a nurse practitioner that had a pediatric practice, and she was all about sleep consulting and breastfeeding support, and like completely different than what I was doing in clinical nutrition, but our mission was the same. And so if I had a client that came to me recently postpartum and she was struggling, our missions were so aligned, like we just wanted to serve. And our mission was to help and be of service to our community. So it wasn't like I was aligning with someone that had a completely different focus of she only cared about revenue and she just wanted to grow her business and like she didn't really care who was walking through the door. There's what I guess the point I'm trying to make is that you don't need to specifically be sitting in the same target market to be able to serve other people's patients or clients. There's so much opportunity that exists when you look beyond the lens or the four walls of your practice.
Awesome.
Okay, so we have another comment here. So we used to do that. I used to try connecting and collaborating with a lot of different healthcare providers, massage, chiro, naturopath, but also started to pull Jane referral reports, and we don't get a lot of referral from that. Most
Mm.
referrals are coming from docs or word of mouth.
Awesome.
That's
And it's so
great.
great you're pulling that report to know, because it's so important to just follow what's working, right? And so if that's what's working, word of mouth, I mean, great. That's
Yeah.
excellent. Doctors and word of mouth. Um, Marie Michelle, what is your health discipline? I would just love to know. That's so great. You've got physio and you've got a lot of doctor referrals. That's great. Right
Yeah.
on.
And word of mouth is great. Those are
Yeah,
golden
the
referrals.
best example of excellent patient care.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Does anybody have any questions for Dr. Julie today as we close out? You can drop that in the chat or unmute yourself and ask away. She's an open book.
Thank you, Jen.
You're welcome.
It's such a pleasure to be here. Thanks everyone for joining. This was such a great conversation. And we have a question here from Emily. I'm a solo ND, so that's naturopathic doctor, in my second year of practice in a small rural town. I'm noticing that word of mouth referrals and taking part in community events is driving growth a lot more than Instagram ads. Yes, I would love another session on marketing. Awesome. We would love to do that. We're here to serve, as Jen just said. Emily, well done. And I think you're so smart because you've figured this out early enough on in your career. I discovered the same thing. And I think that's what practitioners notice most is that ads aren't as powerful as word of mouth. Word of mouth will always drive the right people who convert, and then they're more aligned to your values and your treatment approach. And they're just the best patients that will stay with you long term. Like ads might drive people in for an IV or for acute care, but if you want to keep folks for 20 years like I have, then it's certainly word of mouth is the absolute best and community events. I can't say enough about doing events in your community, including webinars or live in-person sessions, workshops. I've seen them just drive so much growth for clinics. That's awesome, Emily, and congrats on your success.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for adding that.
Thank you, everyone. This was great.
Yes, thank you. So the recording will be available and we will send that out to everybody that registered, as well as a digital resource about our chat today. We also have another virtual meetup session coming up on May 13th, and this is going to be a panel talk about burnout, recovery strategies, and nervous system regulation. So if you want to join, you can follow the link on our JNAP Eventbrite page. Thank you so much, Dr. Julie, for being here and your insights and the awesome chat. And to everybody else, thank you for joining. It was a wonderful time.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.